Okay, so some of you are expecting this video. Or not. Hello my Frosty friends, Frosty here, and welcome to one of the last videos ever made in Sharefactory. Kind of. As many of you already know, I started this channel working with Sharefactory, an editing software officially made by Sony to give the players the power to make content straight from their systems. If you've seen some of my older videos, you may recall how bad my editing was back then, although you could argue not much has changed. Anyway, I want to talk about Sharefactory after using it for so long, and talk about some of the growing pains I have had and how a future user can avoid them. But to begin this story, we have to go back to 2019, when I began to run into a problem. Storage space. Back in the day, storage drives like HDDs and SSDs weren't exactly the norm just yet. And this was before the PS5 even existed, so this was a big issue for a lot of people at the time, including me. Listen, I was more concerned about which Call of Duty game to have installed at any given time. 500 gigabytes? In this economy? To help my storage issue, I had to constantly keep my PS4 storage tidy. And one of the things holding me back? You guessed it, video clips. At the time, the only solution I can think of, for some reason, was to post these clips onto Twitter. I thought this would be a good way for me to save my recording somewhere for people to see, but I had way too many clips just to keep in one place. So I decided to use Sharefactory on my PS4 to upload 3 or more clips into a single Twitter video, which is about 3 minutes long. At the time, I never edited the clips. I just compiled them together and uploaded them, never really thinking about how they would do on Twitter. After a few months of doing this, I decided on April 19th, 2020, I would finally post these clips onto YouTube. But I didn't upload my Twitter clips, just what I had left over. I didn't actually upload the Twitter ones until just recently. But ever since I started this channel, I've always attempted to do something new with Sharefactory. Around this time, I knew I wouldn't understand everything Sharefactory was capable of. So I decided to learn as I went along, and it shows, and I think a lot of you would also share that sentiment. But during those few years of creating, there were some caveats I slowly noticed over time, and that got worse as time went on, and that's what I wanted to talk about today. Now, I'm gonna be honest, these may not apply to everyone watching this video, but I would like to emphasize that these are the problems that I consistently ran into in my experiences. That being said, if you are someone hoping to use Sharefactory in the near future, I suggest you stick around to hear what I have to say, and hear some of my tips and tricks later on. For now, I'll start off with general issues I can feel could apply to anyone using Sharefactory, no matter what kind of content you make. I feel like both of these should be mentioned together because typically what it feels like is if you run into one of them, you'll most likely run into both of them. Clip limit refers to how many recordings are in your timeline, with the max being 100 on PS5 and 50 on PS4. 100 and 50 seem like a big number, however this number can change if you make changes to your timeline, such as adding another clip, which adds 1, splitting your clip up into 2, which adds 1, creating a zoom, adds 2, adding a screenshot, adds 1. These all count as another clip to your clip limit. Now, this wasn't a big problem for me as my earlier videos were pretty light, but if you're someone who likes to do montages or longer length videos, such as my last 2 Lost in the Iceberg videos, one of these will get in the way. For my regulars watching this video, the clip limit was actually the sole reason why my most popular video was actually 9 minutes long. Duration limit, I'm sure all of you watching this video will understand, but for those of you living with the dinosaurs, duration limit simply refers to how long a video can be, that being 1 hour long. This hopefully shouldn't be a problem for 99% of people, but if you're someone who likes to make more long form content, this will be a frustration for you. Alright, so a little bit of an editor's note. So as I was editing the script, I did some research for how long a PS4 video could be, and it turned out it's also 1 hour long. But the reason that is because the PS4 and PS5's capture galleries are both 1 hour long limit. Like, so if you were to record a video on like your PS4 and you hold the share button, the longest time you could do is an hour. Same thing with PS5. But on Sharefactory, you can actually edit a video beyond 60 minutes, despite the fact you can't actually get more than 60-minute footage. So you can actually edit a video on PS4 for 80 minutes long, and this doesn't really make sense to me because what's the point of you actually needing to edit something beyond the export number if you can't even post it over 60 minutes? I mean, it's not like you can post it anyway, it's just going to tell you that it can't, but it's still kind of dumb. I don't really understand it because I never once reached a point in my editing processes on Sharefactories to be like, you know, let me post something for longer or edit something longer than I need to. It doesn't really make sense because you just kind of shoot yourself in the foot, I feel like. Transitions is something that are entirely up to preference, but the majority of what's available by default isn't super intriguing, and I always found myself only ever using 1 or 2 of these options. Most of them have a nice idea behind them, but they tend to add a really ugly background or effect, which makes them really hard to use practically. In the case for sound effects, it's a bit different since you can import your own sounds with a USB drive, but in the event you do have a USB drive, a lot of the stock sound effects suffer from the same issue as transitions, just under a different light. All the sound effects that are included are very corporate feeling versions of already existing names or sounds, which found really jarring to me. So they aren't really the best option when it comes to editing, since you can find the actual version with a Google search.
A few moments later. Get you baited! Get wrecked!
It was at this moment he knew he messed up.
Oh! Oh! Yeet! Yeah, boy!
Yeah, yeet!
YOLO! Yeah, yeet!
One of my biggest gripes about video on video is how strict it is for starters. Adding a video on top of a current video seems to be a hassle for Sharefactory. In 3 of my past videos, I attempted to use it, and oftentimes I just wished I hadn't. For example, in my SpongeBob Galore video, I remember being really annoyed by the fact I couldn't move the video's placement, similar to how you can move something like text or images. Instead, you're locked to preset placement set by Sharefactory. Alright, so for another editor's note, so originally in this part of the script, I was actually going to mention the green screen feature. In the original script, I was actually going to mention how the green screen does a terrible job at cutting out the green second track. However, I did some more research on it. There's a set of dials you can change for how strong the green cutout is, but I do think it requires some criticism. Like, why is it deliberately down here in the corner where it could easily be missed instead of like the menu bar, like literally everything else? I only mention this because, like, imagine if you were to use Sharefactory blindly, you probably wouldn't even know this option was here in the corner, and let alone know that the green screen option was a thing in Sharefactory. Hell, I didn't even know it was an option until Chris used it in his Siege video. So I believe this is like a pretty reasonable criticism to have. Also, why isn't it just like on the strongest setting by default? If this was the case from the start and I just didn't know of the dial's existence, then I wouldn't really have anything to complain about here. But from what I have seen and clearly underutilized, the green screen function appears to be really solid and surprisingly very in-depth, so I guess this one's just on me, but I feel like it shouldn't be that way. Now I'm going to dive into stuff that mostly bothered me, but many people won't ever face. This one's more of a nitpick, but I feel like if Sony added the settings for keyboard and mouse in PlayStation system settings, then they should have developed it into Sharefactory. You can already type out text in Sharefactory, but it's super inconvenient since you need to switch back and forth between keyboard and controller, which I can guarantee nobody wants to do. And if your controller has drift, then placing something like stickers or text, which I did for the better part of a year, then the lack of keyboard and mouse support becomes more apparent. This is something I actually didn't quite think about until it was brought up to me by a friend, but your video files don't have its audio separated as an option, or by default like most editing softwares. However, it's not impossible to do, it just requires a little bit of extra work. If you convert your video files into MP3, you can actually upload it as a music track and it'll function just the same. But you would have to sync the audio, which will require some effort, but that's only really for those who really want their audio separated. But you see, that's the problem we're going to see a lot with Sharefactory. Anything that you can do with Sharefactory could be done 10 times better with anything else. Subtitles in general on Sharefactory are kind of a mixed bag. For one, I think it's great in my content for my video style and works pretty well. Something that frustrates me, however, is the time minimum for its duration on screen. For those unaware, I base my content style on a lot of other YouTubers when it comes to using subtitles. One thing you might see is that they're able to quickly change text within milliseconds, and this is something that Sharefactory isn't quite able to do. So if you have someone who talks really fast, Sharefactory really can't help you unless you have a lot of leeway, which almost never happens. But if you're really good at it, you can get around it for a bit, much like I did for my previous videos, but every now and then it'll be a bit tricky. Similar to subtitles, the images and stickers suffer from the same time limit minimum. This was one of the last straws for me when it came to Sharefactory. Don't worry, I'll get to the other straws here in a second. But as a newly found PNG tuber such as myself, there is no such leeway when it comes to images unlike spoken text, where they can vary in speed and how much text is on screen. Believe me when I say, the time limit for images is way too close for comfort. To articulate this point, I'm going to attempt to edit the puppet in both Sharefactory and my current software as normal. So for some odd reason, Sharefactory doesn't like vertical videos. For my regulars, that issue came up when I was trying to show Lucas's foot in this video. Enough said. As a final footnote for this section, I want to talk about the lack of autosave and undo button. Enough said. Again. No, but for real though, I cannot tell you how many times I had to restart this video because of these not existing, like, at all, but also because of... Yeah, so this is where the real problems start to emerge, and they eventually became more prevalent over time. Starting off with a fairly minor, but still infuriating bug, a bug that I have dubbed the subtitle lock. This has started somewhere in this video, and made its way into this video's final version. Twice. Basically what ends up happening is whenever I subtitle someone, the text tends to go into this lock state, where I can't change its duration no matter how much I try, and even somehow making it a negative subtitle duration, which is impossible. Before it's asked, I did try deleting and redoing the subtitle, but the same bug occurs. In this video specifically, I did decide to just leave it in since it wasn't very noticeable, but trust me, I haven't forgotten. But the most irritating bug of all is one that I can't tell what went wrong in the first place. As everyone already knows, my previous video was made from clips in 2019. Around the time I started this project, I ran into a bunch of problems on the technical side, but there was one that took way too long to fix. When I attempted to import these video files into Sharefactory, I was met with an error, an unusual one I had never seen before. And it looked something along the lines of this. Now, it didn't look exactly like this, but it was very similar. But what I can tell you is, this originates from the fact that Sharefactory, despite it saying 720p video is supported, doesn't like it whatsoever. When I was doing research on how to fix this error on my PS5, it turned out that the PS4 version of Sharefactory has no issue with these types of files, since 720p is its native video recording resolution. So this is purely a PS5 issue. But even after fixing the issue, by using a third-party software on my computer, it still turned out like this. For the record, I still have the original files and they look significantly better than how they turned out. Now I bet you're wondering, why didn't you try something else? I did. For starters, I tried using other editing softwares to piece the clips together and bring them over to Sharefactory, but either one of two things happened. A, it would still turn out like this, or B, it would give me the original error message leading back into problem A. So there really was no winning here. The only real solution was to use a new editing software, which I was not prepared to do, as it probably would have prolonged this video's release longer than it already was. So in the editing process, I upscaled the ever-living shit out of it so it looks somewhat watchable, and that was the best I could do. As with any software, it's bound to have its fair share of corrupt files or errors. However, if you let it happen to your file in Sharefactory, it's bye-bye to you. This alone is the reason why I mentioned the lack of autosave before, because if I hadn't saved this video beforehand, I would have to restart this entire video just like the one before it, all over again. It was during the final part of editing, and I was actually doing the voiceover work, and after deciding I needed a break for the time being, I saved and quit like normal. However, when I came back... So, I don't know how this happened, but I'm just going to show you because I can't save it on PlayStation. So, my app crashes when I open the file. Go into my file, I open it, and it's going to freeze right at the end here. And that's when it crashed. And here I am again. So, nothing is going my way. Nothing is going my way. Yeah, so this video corrupted so badly that it crashes Sharefactory if I dare try to open it. But thankfully, I had a copy of the edited version of the video, and I was just able to start the voiceover again. Now, what was the source of the issue? Not sure, but I have one theory. Voice recording. Call me crazy, but I think voice recording may have been the culprit. The reason I say this is because during the re-recording for that section, after saving and quitting just like before, upon loading back in, I was told that some files were deleted, and lo and behold, it was a voice clip. A seemingly random one too, and at some point in the recording, I was given a clip limit reach warning, which is really weird since I did some research on it and there seems to be no limit on voice recordings that I could find, since second track technically shares the same clip number as the first track. The only explanation I have is maybe voice recording has its own hidden value that no one even on the wiki was able to find. Who knows, since even music even has its own limit apparently. As a final cherry on top, I also struggled how to transfer this massive video onto a new editing software on my computer. Reason for that is because this video was too large for PlayStation to send out on my USB. Isn't that just fun? But also since this video has such big quality issues like I mentioned before, I couldn't just send this video out to YouTube and re-download it, since that meant losing even more quality just from trying to switch over and using those shitty virus-filled YouTube to MP4 websites. Thankfully though, after what felt like 5 hours of researching, I found a site that isn't like the others from a Reddit post, and it perfectly took in all the quality just as it did as it looked on Sharefactory. And that finally brings me to here. If you saw us out through this entire video and you still want to use Sharefactory for your videos, I will now show you every technique that I used for editing my videos in the past, starting with As a workaround to the clip limit, I suggest working on your video in smaller parts. For example, if you have 100 clips, work on the beginning and middle parts of your video and fully edit them. Once you're done, press save and then save as video. Once it's done, it'll be in your Sharefactory media folder, so then all your work becomes one massive clip, giving you tons of legroom. You're not able to re-edit these clips later on, so make sure you're happy with them before saving. To make things simpler, I'll refer to saving the video into one big clip as save teching for future reference. Similar to clip limit, to avoid duration limit, work on your video in smaller pieces and then compile them all together into Sharefactory if you can, or in a separate video software using a USB drive, or re-downloading them on your phone. And then make sure to save tech where you can if need be. But as a small disclaimer, if you do end up save teching, please be on the lookout for your videos to end up having this cutout effect. So for some reason, Sharefactory does this thing where it will actually display one frame from a different clip for some reason. I'm not sure why this is, but if you do end up save teching, do look out for this. As a word of note, this technique also works with images and stickers, but it may be harder to pull off as I already mentioned before. If by chance you use or plan to use text just like myself, here's what you need to know. As a general rule of thumb, single-worded phrases are typically the hardest to subtitle, so if possible, try to avoid subtitling these since the minimum is too long for these. If you try to, it'll just look very weird, but there are very few off chances where you can make it work. To make text more in line with the speaker, try subtitling with larger portions. For example, it's not the best idea to do only 3 or so words at a time if they're speaking a full sentence. Rather, it's best to get as much text to fit as comfortably on the screen as possible. And generally, if the message is longer than 4 seconds, you should be able to create an adaptive text, as I like to call it. To make an adaptive text, listen out for any kinds of pauses or breath takes in your speaker's sentence, and if you find one within that region, use your D-pad to find out exactly where they started this pause, and subtitle anything after that. You should already have it subtitled from earlier. Then place your text on top of existing text, and delete the old text that you just subtitled, and add some spaces to create a pop-out effect that will still be perfectly aligned with each other. Also, as a little bonus, to achieve this incredibly short text like this, all you have to do is use a screenshot, save tech, subtitle, save tech again, and cut out the screenshot. Alright, I have to admit, I really don't have much here to give. All I can really say is don't use video overlay on Sharefactory unless you want to. Realistically speaking, I have very little usage around this area if it already wasn't clear with the green screen segment. But also on top of that, there are just many other options that I haven't touched here, like camera and more advanced green screen settings. But from what I have used, that being video overlay and voice recording, don't use video overlay if you can. Try using a different editor for that task as it may be a lot easier achieving what you want there, if you strive for more freedom in video settings. If you ever get the subtitle lock bug, I recommend not doing the particular area that is giving you the bug. Instead, use the save tech and redo the subtitle on that version. Simple as that. While on the topic of bugs, I feel like you should be wary of the voice recording, since I feel like my experience was a 1 in a million scenario, and it may not affect you in the slightest, but you should keep an eye on it just in case. But that's all the tips I have. But I do have one final topic regarding Sharefactory, and that is future updates. Something that isn't clear about Sharefactory is how much longer it will be supported by Sony. The last major update for it was in June of 2022, with the one before that being the PS5 release version in November of 2020, and since then there hasn't been any minor update patches for bugs like at all. If they did, then this video wouldn't exist at all, to be quite frank. It's clear that Sony has very little interest in keeping Sharefactory supported. It's only a matter of time when we stop getting updates at all. But I could be wrong, it just takes one to read the room. And that brings me to, well, the end of this video. I want to take the time to thank you for watching, but I also want to take this time to mention some things about this video. So I initially started the idea of this script back in early 2024, but when I finally decided to work on this a few months back, a lot of the initial criticisms I probably forgot about. I mean, it is my fault for not writing notes, but I did make the best effort to try to remember everything I wanted to talk about. But in the event I didn't, I'll try to update you in the comments, and I'll also answer any questions on how to use Sharefactory if I can answer them. But once again, thank you for watching, and stay frosty. Damn it, my fucking mouth. Probably chose like the worst time to start recording this shit. Alright. You just gotta fucking lock in. Okay. As many of you already know, I started this channel working with Sharefactory, an editing software officially made by PlayStation to make content straight from their systems. Wait, should I edit that? I should edit that. That didn't sound right. How do I stop this? Fuck. As many of you already know, I started this channel working with Sharefactory, an editing software officially made by Sony to give the fuck. I just wrote this too. Okay. To help my storage issue, oh my god, my mouth, dude. Oh my god, it hurts. Shouldn't have done this today. I suggest you stick around to hear what I have to say and hear some of my trips later. Trips? God damn it. I suggest you stick around to what I have to say. Wait, stick around to what I have to say? That's not the lyric at all. Lyric. God, everything. Okay. I suggest you stick around to hear what I have to say and hear some of my trick. What? However, it's not impossible to do. It just requires a little bit extra work. If you're provide, what did I say? This is something I shouldn't quite think about until I brought it. Up. This is something I shouldn't quite think about until it was brought up to me by a friend. But your video files. Oh, the voice crack. You have when it comes to images, unlike spoken text, where they can be vary in speed and how much. Fucking damn it. There is no such leeway. So, fuck, I'm reading the old one now. But as a newly found PG. Fuck, damn it. But as a newly. I can't say it while I'm laughing. No. But thankfully, I had a copy of the edited version of the video, and I was just able to start. Fuck. Call me crazy, but I think voice recording. Fuck. Voice recording? What did I say? I don't even know what I said. A seemingly random one too. And at some point in the fucking. And at some point in the recording, I was given a clip limit reach limit. Oh my god. What did I say? Clip limit reach limit? Not at all what it says. As a final cherry on top, I also struggled on how. Fucking. Damn it. Struggling how to speak, apparently. As a final cherry on top, I also struggled on. Fucking. Damn it. Since that meant losing even more quality just from trying to switch over and using those. Come on. And it perfectly took in all the quality just as it did. Fuck. As a general rule of thumb, single-worded. Oh my god. Single-worded. And then add some spaces to create a pop-out effect.